Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Stumblin Forward. I'm one of your hosts, Monica Ortega.
And I'm Kristen Herman.
And today we have a brand new guest we're super excited to bring to you guys. Sarah St. John is an entrepreneur, podcaster, online course creator, and author. She's created several startups throughout her entrepreneurial career of over a decade. She currently owns a podcast production agency called Podseam. She's also the podcast host of Frugalpreneur, Building a Business on a Bootstrap Budget, which aims to show people how to launch and manage an online business on a budget. Thanks for being on the show, Sarah. How's it going?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, I know I kind of gave a little bit of an intro, but do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, yeah, I can give you a little bit of a background. Um, so in 2008, I had 6 different jobs that year, not at the same time, but throughout the course of the year. And I realized that I didn't want to work for somebody else. And so I started a photography business. And but I realized that while I like taking photos of animals and landscapes and architecture, I don't like taking photos of people. But that's where the money is. I was doing weddings and portraits. But the bigger issue was the expense to maintain and upkeep equipment and whatnot. And so I decided to switch to an online business model, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do online. So I tried a bunch of different things like blogging, affiliate marketing, drop shipping, and all of that. And it was through the course of that process that I discovered all these like free or really affordable tools and resources people could use to manage a business on a budget online. And so I decided to write a book called Frugalpreneur. And it was while I was writing that book that I decided to launch a podcast, also called Frugalpreneur. But it was just going to be, 10 episodes or something, just to kind of coincide with the book as an extra way to market. But I was getting more leverage and traction from the podcast than the book and making, connections and networking and all of that. So I decided to keep the podcast going. I think I have about 80 or so episodes now, and I love the connections that I'm making. And I was editing my own podcast, and people would compliment me on it. And so I was like, well, why not get paid to do it for other people? So then I launched the production agency, and now I'm working on a podcasting course. And so I'm all in on podcasting now, but it was quite a journey to get there over a decade.
Love it. You sound like me. I was like, in the past month, let's start a new YouTube channel, work on the podcast, and write a book. That
Yeah.
seems like a doable plan.
And I was
Yeah,
like, it sounds like me with like the 6 jobs in one year. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I think I have like 10 W-2s, maybe 3 1099s. I'm like, oh yeah. And then I take it to the accountant. I'm like, sorry,
Yeah,
have
exactly.
fun.
That's
Bye.
awesome. I feel like you got in on it at a good time as well, because obviously a lot of people now are being forced to transition into creating online businesses or
Mhm.
transitioning their business into an online model. So how has that sort of shifted your business?
Um, I mean, I feel like the future in a way is online. I mean, with the whole, I mean, it was already going in that direction anyway,
Yeah.
but then with the whole COVID thing and people were like forced to go online for online schooling, online, their day jobs or even starting online businesses. I feel like I mean, there's certain things that can't go online, like
Yeah.
a car dealer or like getting your oil changed. Obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things that can't be done online,
It's
but
like
there,
we can show you it online, but you need to come in for
Yeah.
that one. Sorry. Sorry.
right, exactly. Yeah, you can educate people online about
Yeah.
anything, but to actually get the job done, some things you have to do in person. But
Yeah.
I think more and more people are realizing what you can do online.
Yeah.
And so I think, and plus with people getting laid off and all that stuff during the pandemic and people can really only be in their house and be online anyway.
Yeah.
I think tons of people are probably starting online businesses, and I know the number of podcasts like doubled.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
We
yeah,
started out during a pandemic, so that makes
Yeah, I
sense.
was gonna say.
We're like, what else are we doing? I mean, we technically started it before and then never did anything with it, but that's another story. But I was gonna say, I love the name the Frugalpreneur because I do think that a lot of people, when they start a business, they're like, oh, well, I need a loan that's like, $1 million to start any business, or I need to have money to start with. And thinking of it in the mindset of like, no, you're okay if you budget it properly, and yeah, you're doing it smart. I've been talking to myself recently about work smarter, not harder, and I've been saying that a lot and trying to enforce that. But so where did Frugalpreneur come from?
The name, it's kind of funny. I was actually in a Dave Ramsey financial peace class, which is about like paying off debt and saving money and all this stuff. And while I was sitting there, I was like, okay, all these ideas are great, but what about making more money to, help with that? And for some reason, the word frugalpreneur came to my mind, and I was like, and then I got the idea to write the book. Well, because it was kind of like I was thinking, okay, I've learned so much with all these online businesses
Yeah.
and discovered all these tools and ways to do it on a budget and all that, that I could write a book on it. And then I was like, well, I guess I will. And so, yeah, so the phrase just kind of came to me from sitting in a Dave Ramsey class, which it has nothing really to do with it, but I
No,
don't know
that's
that I
okay.
just remember that's where I got the idea.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you're right. Like, I think a lot of people just assume that you need a bunch of money to start a business. And if you're starting a brick and mortar or a retail location, yeah, you're probably going to need a lot of money or a loan or something. But that's what I love about online business is you could start an online business for like $5 or I operate all my businesses for under 100 every month. I think I actually got that down to like 40 or 60 now, but anyway, so yeah, that's what I love about online business because you don't have all that overhead. And I mean, you need like your basics, like a website and an email list. And, depending on what kind of online business you have, you might need some extra things like, as a podcaster, I need a mic and things like that. Um, but for the most part, it's super affordable. And I think even with podcasting, people assume because they imagine like broadcast studios and radio stations
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that you need to spend, thousands of dollars on equipment. But I started my podcast for under $100. So
Honestly, when we were starting our podcast, I was like, I mean, we could obviously invest in a Rode mic and get all this like nice equipment, but I mean, both of us had the little snowballs, and you plug those in, and I feel like the podcast sounds well. I think it's more about the content and that you can understand it, you can hear it. But I mean, that's just going into the technician of like, podcasting. But yeah, I totally get it where people think like, no, I need the nice stuff or else it's not going to be a podcast. And it's like, no,
Well,
it
same
still will. It still will be, I guess.
YouTube and all of that. Like I have a travel show and I started it just shooting on my iPhone and going for hikes. But people
Yeah.
think they need that top end camera and a
Mhm.
drone and like work up to those things. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's where the
Say-
smarter thing, yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest mistake that people make in online business? Is it spending too much money or is it something else?
yeah, I suppose spending too much money or just getting so stuck in their head that like they never start. I guess never starting is probably a problem. And actually, a problem that I had was shiny object syndrome, which I think is a problem most entrepreneurs have at some point. Um, and that's probably why it took me a decade to get to figuring out what I really was supposed to be doing. Because I was trying this, that, and the other thing, and I mean, I guess if you really have no idea what you want to do, that's okay to a certain extent. But you really have to niche down and focus on one thing, because if you're doing 5 different things, then you're dedicating, 20% of your time and resources to each thing instead of 100% to the one thing. And um, so I would say that's kind of one thing that I wish I had done differently. I feel like I wasted time in a way. Um,
But it's
But if
fascinating because
yeah,
your wasting time was putting together all of the knowledge to create the
yeah,
business you have now, which is like somebody going to school for 4 years, right?
exactly. It's
And
like the
then
journey that you need, to do, or like, the take, like you probably learned so much in all those other things where it's led you to where you are right now, So yeah.
sometimes not being an
that's true.
expert in one makes you an expert in all of it, which sounds like you did. I did the same thing. I'm like, my book's about pivoting because I do so many different things. I'm not an expert at any of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it sounds
Yeah.
like you did the same thing by putting together all the knowledge that you picked up over the years of with the shiny object syndrome to
Yeah.
help new business owners streamline what it is they want to do. So
Right. And not making the same mistakes for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the Frugalpreneur book, the process between that, like, did it take you a long time to write? Did you feel like it just kind of came to you all at once,
No, it didn't take, I can't remember exactly how long it took. Um, but it wasn't long. And when I self-published it, and then, I wrote a second book called Authorpreneur based on my experience self-publishing. And then now I have a third book called Podcastpreneur. So it's kind of like as I learn something, then then I think I'm done now with writing books, because that's 3 books. It's a good like trifecta or trilogy, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it.
I wouldn't say that you should be done though, because you never know what's going to happen. Like later on, you'd be like, you know what? I got to get another book. I got another idea.
I said I would never write another book, and then I came up with a title for a second one, and I was like, no.
You're like, not again. My mind. Anyway.
Yeah, I have titles and ideas for others, but I don't know. I feel like when I'm writing a book, all my focus goes into that, and now I'm wanting to focus on, podcasting and the production agency and all that. Um but yeah, it's kind of interesting how one thing kind of rolls into the next thing. And like you said, like even though part of me feels like I wasted 10 years or whatever doing this, that, and the other, but it was doing this, that, and the other that made me, decide to write that book, and then the podcast kind of incorporating all of that. So
Well, let's talk about Podsteam. So you started this podcast agency. I mean, you said that you came up with the idea because people were talking about how good your tech stuff was. How has that transitioned? Like, what's that process look like of suddenly working with clients and working with all these other people? And, what are your goals with that? I would love to hear more about it.
yeah, so basically, what it is, I think the bigger challenge, I don't think recording a podcast is really the biggest challenge for people, other than finding the time to do it and learning, the software or something. I think it's all the post production. That's how people pod fade is the term, when, they start a podcast and only do like 10 episodes or whatever is the average. But it's all the post production, the editing, and the promotion and marketing and the anyway, so basically people will record their episode and then send me that file, and then I basically do everything else, which is the editing, producing the show notes, transcripts, audiograms, graphics, all of that stuff. And in addition, I do some education as well, like listen to their episodes and offer critique and things like that. And I would say, I mean, it's definitely, I guess, labor intensive.
I was gonna say, I'm like, that's a lot of work, doing
Yeah.
all that for a podcast, as well as having your own podcast, and
Right.
then I mean, like, it's a good amount of work for sure. So
Yeah. And so it's kind of a challenge, finding time or balancing it all, because like then my own podcast
mhm.
kind of falls to the wayside sometimes, and sometimes I'll have like 2 weeks between episodes and whatnot. So that's kind of a challenge,
Mhm.
but I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. So what do you feel like are some of the mistakes you've made along the way in regards to um, the Frugalpreneur and the podcast, and like we can go from there. What are some mistakes you feel like you've made?
I mean, aside from the shiny object syndrome, I'd say another mistake I've made is spending so much time learning and not implementing what I'm learning. Like, and it's good to learn, especially in the beginning, and you really should always be learning. Like I listen to podcasts and read books and courses and all this stuff. But if you're not implementing what you're learning, it's kind of pointless.
Mm-hmm.
So now I try, like for every hour I spend learning, I try to spend another hour implementing.
Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Yeah, so I would say that's definitely been.
I feel like that also kind of goes into shiny object syndrome, right? Where like,
Mhm.
ooh, there's a course. Ooh, I can learn that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Clubhouse now, and I'm like, oh, I can pop into this
Yes.
room, and I can go to this room, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I need a minute
It's
to like
like
process.
one thing at a time and
Yeah,
then do it. Like that's totally I feel that.
especially as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, because part of the reason we created our own businesses is we love to learn all this stuff. But yeah,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just now getting into Clubhouse. Like I've just gone into rooms. I haven't actually hosted a room yet. I'd like to, and I have a few
fun.
ideas, but
Let's do it. We could talk about
oh, okay.
publishing. We could talk about podcasting. I'm all over it. I have a problem.
Okay.
She's a podcast. She's a Clubhouse addict already. So
I really am. Yeah.
Clubhouse is like her thing right now. Like she's loving it. What would you tell someone who would like to start their own business or even maybe start their own podcast or write a book?
Let's see. When someone is starting a business, I recommend if it's something that they are good at or someone has told them that they're good at and it's something that they enjoy doing, even if it's like a hobby, finding a way to turn that into income in some way. Because I mean, people make an income with the weirdest things, like maybe a YouTube channel or a course on knitting. I mean, I don't know. Like even if it's just a hobby, you can probably find a way to make money somehow.
Hmm.
And so anything that you're an expert in or told you're good at or enjoy doing, finding a way to somehow turn that into an income, whether it's through coaching someone or a course or a podcast on the subject or a book. Um, and you could do other things like drop shipping, affiliate marketing, and all that. That's kind of more general. But yeah, I mean, I recommend going the online route personally because it's so affordable. But of course, not everything can be done online. So it kind of depends. And then, yeah, definitely get a website up and going. Um, because it's important to have a social media presence, but a problem that some people have is like they think that's all they need, like a
Hmm.
Facebook page or whatever. But the problem is that's rented land versus own land. And with a website, because with like Facebook, for example, you never know when their algorithms are going to change. And I think only like 1 to 2% of your audience sees your stuff unless you pay to boost it. Um, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen with social media in general in the next,
Yeah.
decade or whatever. So it's important to have a website that people can go to and have some kind of lead magnet on there to capture email addresses, like give away something for free, a checklist or a cheat sheet or an ebook. I give away actually all my 3 books, PDF versions, for free. And then have an email marketing platform to promote and stay in communication. And what I use is called SendFox. I don't know if you've heard of it. Um, but when I signed up, your first 3,000 subscribers were free, and now it's 1,000. Um, So you can get started for free. But what I love about it, especially for content creators like podcasters, YouTubers, bloggers, is that you can put in your YouTube link or your RSS feed and it'll automatically generate a new newsletter every week based on your new content. And so it saves time.
Yeah,
um,
switch over because I'm over the one I'm on. And that sounds good.
yeah, I love SendFox. And so have an email marketing platform of some sort. And then I mean, those are the basic things that you really need to get started. And then, of course, depending on what you're doing, if you're a podcaster, then I would recommend a mic, which mine's the ATR 2100. It's like $60 or something, or $80 maybe. So depending on what you're doing, you might need additional things, but that's basically what I would recommend starting out, regardless of what you're doing.
That's nice. All right. So what are your goals with everything that you're doing? You have your hand in a lot of different areas. So like, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah. So I still have my hand in a lot of areas like I always have, but the good thing is it's all around podcasting, whereas before it was all kinds of different things. So at least I'm making progress there. So in 5 years, well, I mean, I guess continuing doing what I'm doing, hopefully, let's see, in 5 years, hopefully I'd be on episode like, I don't know. What would that, I don't know, maybe episode
100,
500,
200, 300.
I don't know.
I can't do math.
278.
1,000. Anyway.
Let's see. And, continue with the podcast production agency. I'm currently working on a course called Podcast Profit Pro. And so maybe like additional courses or an online community. I would love I've had some decently big name people on my podcast. You'll know their name if you're in the niche type thing, but I would love to get like the sharks from Shark Tank on, and there's some people that are kind of high on my list that I would love to get on my show. So I guess in 5 years I hope to have accomplished that, and help other people start their podcast or their business on a budget.
Awesome. Very cool. So where can everyone find your stuff? Like what social media are you on, and where can we find you?
So I give away those 3 books for free, which you can get at thesarahstjohn.com/free. That's Sarah with an H and then STJOHN. And then I'm on all the social media platforms at the Sarah St. John. Actually, Clubhouse is Sarah St. John because it wasn't taken yet. Everywhere else is the Sarah St. John because there's some other Sarah St.
Apparently
John,
there's some Sarah St. John out there who needs to come forward. I'm just kidding.
And let's see. And then the podcast Frugalpreneur. I mean, if you search that phrase in any podcast directory, it should pop up. And then, Podseam, PODSEAM.com is the production agency. And the course is podcastprofitpro.com. It hasn't gone live yet. It's on pre-sale for like 80% off. But I'm hoping that it goes live in, I don't know, a couple months, maybe somewhere around there.
My gosh, that's so cool that you've done so many things and you have like so much going on online. Like, I feel like it's all organized and in your head, and it's like, that's impressive, really impressive. But thank you so much for being on the show, Sarah. And we're definitely going to be linking everything that you said below. And if anybody who's listening, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Please leave 5 stars, and we're on YouTube if you want to watch this video. And thank you so much again. And my name is Kristen Herman. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Monica Ortega.
And bye, guys. Thanks, Sarah.